Hello, Jeremy. Glad you are here as my guest today. Last time we had some problem, but now I hope everything is okay. Anyway, welcome to everybody in this new interview. Jeremy is an American nature photographer, owner of Bird Burger channel as well, famous channel for the unique YouTube photo competition. But please, Jeremy, introduce yourself and tell us something about you.
Yeah, so my name's Jeremy Neipp. I do wildlife photography mostly. I do a little bit of landscape, but mostly I focus on wildlife photography, and specifically within that, focus mostly on bird photography. And excited to be here talking with you today. Most of my business, my work is based around YouTube or content creation. And like you said, I own a second channel as well that's called Bird Burger brand, and we run a yearly photo competition. And right now we're in the middle of it, so that's the most exciting thing going on for me right now.
Very well. So I think you are ready, but okay, watching your other channel, I was amazed how many different systems you have used, as well as many adventure in nature you had, like in the Yellowstone, that I think is one of my favorite videos of yours, and where you wasn't alone.
Thank you.
Yes, because there was even another great wildlife photographer. What's Wildlife, if I right? But do you know him well?
Yeah. Watts. So Watts Wildlife is the channel. His name is Evan Watts. Yep.
Okay.
And we've gotten to know each other pretty decently, especially over this year because we worked together a lot. It was 4 months in the planning doing that trip, and then we spent a whole week together in person, and then we've been in communication ever since. So especially this year, we've gotten to know each other. But last year is when we kind of first got in touch and got to know each other. So I appreciate that. My Yellowstone series, which actually the day this is recording, so I don't know when this is releasing, but the day this is recording, the second part of the series is coming out tomorrow. It's been my favorite video series I've ever put together, for sure. So if anyone is like kind of curious about what I do on my channel, I'd highly recommend going and checking out my Yellowstone series, as that's been one of the best things I feel like I've ever produced. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. As I said last time, your that video is really, really amazing for the many animals there are, and what a great adventure you had. So I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, Jeremy. Now it's time for questions. So the first three questions are about you, of course. So, and when you started taking pictures in nature, and what attracted you the most? Maybe staying in nature, watching animals, or just walking somewhere?
Yeah, I think what attracts me most about wildlife photography is the combination of how it forces you to be present in your moment, in your surroundings, in the scene that you're in. To do wildlife photography well, you have to be aware of your surroundings. And so it kind of forces you to get into this place where you're just completely kind of out in nature and present and in relationship with nature in order to be able to capture good images. So I love that about it. But the second thing I really like is some people don't necessarily approach wildlife photography this way, so this is just what works for me. But for me, I love the challenge of getting better constantly. In wildlife photography, I personally feel like there's never, you can never take that perfect shot. Like it's not possible to get to that point where you've taken a shot, and at least for me, it's not possible to get to that point where I take a shot and I'm like, this is exactly the shot I wanted. I don't want any better. I'm good. I'll check out now. Like that never happens for me. For me, I always, even my favorite shots I've ever taken, I always see little things in them that I'm like, that could be better next time. And I'm going to work on that. And so on and so forth. So I love that kind of struggle and that challenge in wildlife photography. And so that motivates me to constantly kind of revisit places, subjects, and constantly trying to achieve new things. So.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really good thing to try to improve always day by day. And
yeah,
indeed, I'm a little like you because I'm not always happy of my shoots because when I check out on my computer, there is always something that I don't like it. So I try to make something better in the next photo shoot, but not always I can. So it's really hard to get the perfect shoot. Even because the most time the subjects are not in the same place, or or maybe they are not at all. So it's really, really difficult. Okay. The next one. What's your favorite subject and why? Even though you have already told me a little.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's such a difficult decision to choose just one, but I don't know. My answer might even vary each time I answer this question, but usually I think my answer comes down to a scarlet macaw is probably my favorite thing I've ever gotten to see in real life. It was a bird that for me was one of my introductory birds into the world of wildlife photography and bird photography, in that I kind of, as a kid, you go through, I don't know, in schools, you go through textbooks and you see all these different like exotic animals. And for me, one of the animals that stood out a lot in my childhood was a macaw. Partially due to the fact that, I'd see it in textbooks and think like, whoa, this animal is very exotic. And I kind of dream about like being able to see one. Also partially because my mom is she's very fond of parrots and macaws, and she owned some growing up as pets, and they were her best friends and all that good stuff. So when I finally got to be in Costa Rica, like just as I was starting my bird photography journey, I got to witness one of the places that they're left in Costa Rica. They're really only existing in two places still. And in one of the towns there's a colony of 200 that each evening they will go down, or each morning they'll go down to the beach, kind of forage and play around there most all day long. And then at night, right at sunset, they'll fly back up to the hills in pairs of two. And so they're just flying over my head 2 by 2, and I'm hearing them from miles away because they're so loud. And it was just a very fantastic and incredible experience, and watching them get to kind of interact and play with each other. It's truly incredible, and it opens your eyes to like how much emotions animals can have. They aren't just robotic, program systems going about their lives in the world, but they actually have, relationships and feelings with one another. So that's probably my favorite subject I've ever gotten to see. Yeah.
Great. I understand you, but in a situation like that, I can only imagine, what was your feeling, your emotion, watching such a beauty in the sky? Nothing. Yeah. It's always great seeing nature in motion, or just watching them. Very great. My favorite subject are birds of prey. So when I was a child, I always read books about raptors. Maybe mostly for the golden eagle. So when I had the chance to see a golden eagle for real, I was really super happy, like a baby, like a child. So I understand you when you talk about good feeling, staying in nature, and watching that kind of birds. Yes, I understand.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Golden eagle's beautiful.
Yeah, amazing bird. Okay, what's the best skill to be a good nature photographer for you? What is the best skill?
Oh man, I think the best skill you can have, in my opinion, to become I guess there's a couple different ways you can go about it, but I think the best skill you can have, if you're asking that question for the sense of the best skill you can have to become a talented nature photographer, I think I would suggest being a learner. So being someone who's always ready to improve, always ready to take feedback, has maybe some people that they ask for feedback around them. Maybe they have a mentor that they ask for feedback. Really, I think that if you aren't willing to grow, and if you aren't ready and always kind of in a posture of humility and wanting to kind of improve, you'll grow so much slower than if you have that posture of improvement and kind of reception to feedback. You'll grow so much quicker, exponentially quicker. I know for me in my journey, I think the times I've grown quickest are the times where I am ready to receive feedback from people and wanting that, like actually craving that. And when I do that, I've noticed that I'm able to grow so much quicker than those spots where I'm kind of like, yeah, my photography is good where it's at. And kind of just, I don't know, feeling overly confident maybe in where I'm at. So that would be my number one piece of advice for improving someone's talent as a wildlife photographer or nature photographer.
Interesting. I didn't think before a thing like that. Even because usually we tend to watch an wildlife photographer like a person that really know the wildlife, or maybe a person with a lot of passion. We have to need a really passion when we are in nature, waiting for a lot of time, maybe without taking a picture, or maybe without seeing our target, our subject. So
yeah,
I thought, well, it was another skill, but this is great. It's a really different kind. It's a really different kind to view nature photography and how to approach nature photography. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I hear the same thing all the time. I always hear, the common responses I get are like knowing your subjects, like understanding your subjects, or like you said, you mentioned something else. But yeah, both the two things you said are very patience. You mentioned those are two very common responses I hear, and those are great too. Those are incredibly valuable. But I think without a base level of like desiring and truly craving to grow, you can't even really implement those two as effectively as you should. So yeah, that's why I often think about it in that way. But yeah.
Okay, a question that is outside the main ones. But do you have a method for getting better in this case?
Yeah, that's a good question.
If you don't want to say your secret. Just some tips.
No, yeah, for sure. Okay. I mean, I would say my method, I would like to even establish a better method than I have. But I do have people that I've recognized in my journey that I go to for specific things that I know that they are better than me at, or maybe they are more capable than me at, or maybe they're at my same level. So at least we can challenge each other. A great example. This isn't in wildlife photography specifically, but we already brought up Watts Wildlife. Evan and I have for a while now. In terms of content creation in YouTube, we are constantly asking each other for feedback, challenging each other. I really appreciate he's willing to point out to me, like, I think this could have been better in your video. He'll tell me like, maybe this section is getting a little bit too long. It's a little bit too slow. Or maybe he's like, maybe you could hook someone in right here. We'll do that with each other. So that's a good example of like, that's a system and a method I have in place to make sure that I'm not staying stagnant and I'm continually improving. Someone from more of like a wildlife photography aspect that I take a lot of inspiration or teaching from is Ray Hennessy. I don't get to do it with him as much because he's such a busy guy, but I have appreciated in the past, like I get to learn a lot from him when it comes to just the photography aspect of things. He teaches me a lot, and I love hearing what he has to say because he's someone who's above my level and can challenge me as a wildlife photographer. So those are kind of my methods in place, and that's what I recommend to people is find someone that you can challenge each other. Or if maybe they're a level above you, maybe you'll have to pay for a mentorship or whatever it may be, but somehow doing that is going to benefit you a lot. So
I agree. Many years ago, I went out with a friend of mine that he was really, really good for landscape photography, and many things I learned was thanks to him. He told me what he knew. So for me, was an example to follow. So sharing our knowledge, I think, is the key to improve ourselves day by day. So
Yeah.
it's the truth what you said. Yeah.
I love that. That's a great experience you had as well. Yeah.
I really agree. Well, I like this interview.
Yeah.
Now it's time to talk about gear. Speaking about gear, yes, having you used lots of different systems, I think you have the right experience to make a good judgment. So, in your opinion, what's the best brand for nature photography right now?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I'm gonna get roasted in the comments. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I feel like that question really depends on your price range, your budget. Because depending on your budget, you're going to get better brands in different budget ranges. And it also depends on really what you do in wildlife photography. So, for example, someone who shoots in a lot of very low light scenarios, maybe a lot of sunsets, like post sunset, pre sunset, or pre sunrise, right post sunrise. Someone like that is going to need a camera that maybe focuses a lot more on noise control. Maybe it's not as high of a resolution, but rather it's better at handling that noise, right? Maybe someone who shoots a lot of action shots is going to need a camera that's more capable autofocus wise than someone else. So for me, for example, I don't shoot too many action shots. I focus more on the aesthetic of the image and the scene of the image. And because of that, autofocus has never been something to me that is quite as important as to some other people that I know. For example, like first person that comes to the top of my mind is a guy named Mark Smith. He shoots like so many action shots. That's pretty much all he shoots in what I see. He doesn't really focus too much on scenery or aesthetic, but rather he focuses on the action. So I'm sure for him, having a camera with incredible autofocus is top of his priority list. But for me, it almost matters none. Like I've gotten good enough with manual focus to where most situations I can manually focus onto a bird for what I'm wanting to do, and I'm good there. So it depends on a lot, but if I just had to give some general wide sweeps, like if I just had to say general statements, I would say that OM Systems is really good right now if you're on that bottom low end budget. I shouldn't say bottom because you're still going to make a significant investment, but for people who are familiar with wildlife photography, they kind of know the minimum requirements financially. But near the bottom of that range, OM Systems is really great. Once you get into that middle range, I really think right now that Panasonic is stepping up into the game and kind of filling in that mid-range gap budget-wise. And I know that they are headed in the right direction. So even where they're at now is good, but I know that they're heading in a really good direction. And then when you get to the top, that's really tricky, but personally, I'd either say really Sony or Nikon right now. Nikon is very specific in what they're doing, and they're very like, how do you say it? Like they have their two camera models that work, and they have their lens setup that work, and they do certain things very well. But then other things are kind of just not even worrying about. And then Sony kind of the same, but in a different way. So I'd say that like Sony is doing a really good job with creating good hybrid cameras that are also very good at video, while also being incredible autofocus cameras. Whereas Nikon is really good specifically for wildlife photography right now.
I agree.
So
they are
they have a great lens setup.
The target for wildlife photography or nature photography in general. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a ton of different ways to answer that question, but I don't know. I very much cheapened that, so that's not a very great answer. I feel like, but in the short, yeah.
Your system, I don't know because I've never used it. Just only once of a friend of mine. But I think it's really good, even because having the two pair crop factor is a good advantage in nature photography. So you can have a smaller lens system, but with the same focal length of a full frame system. So I think it's really good. And even for image quality, they are pretty similar to the other system. So I think it's a good alternative to the famous brand like Nikon, Sony, and Canon. Maybe Nikon and Canon, because Sony is the third one, is the new brand.
New big one,
yes. The historical brand are Nikon and Canon, of course.
Yeah. I think personally that Panasonic is the best bang for buck brand right now. That's in the wildlife photography sphere. There's some other brands maybe that aren't so much in the wildlife photography sphere that also can be very good value. But I think Panasonic is really the best dollar for dollar camera right now. But yeah, I have gotten to use cameras across many different systems. The only one I still haven't gotten to use extensively is Nikon. I have played with it a little bit, but I do know a lot of wildlife photographers who are deep in the Nikon field, and I get to kind of experience vicariously a little bit through them. But really, you can't go wrong with a lot of brands nowadays. It just is more like, what's the best dollar for dollar camera and what are you using it for specifically? So, yeah.
Actually, in the present scenario, every brand has the right camera for everybody. So we can't make a mistake choosing one brand or another, because indeed every brand has a camera for a nature photographer. So we can't make
there's a lot of good options.
Of course. But speaking about Panasonic, I haven't thought about it for wildlife photography. Maybe more for videos. But you are saying that it's really good even for nature photography. So it's a great option for everybody, of course.
Yeah, I think in that mid-range right now, their Panasonic S5 II with paired with, for example, like a Sigma 60 to 600 that released is I feel like the best option you can get in the 3,000 to 4,000 range for the total setup combined, camera and lens. So that's kind of why I say mid-range. I feel like they're the top, but again, they're heading in the right direction. Like their next release is going to be even better. So the S5 II is just the beginning of their step into our field, if that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, okay. But I am very biased. So yeah, let's just put that disclaimer out there.
No problem at all, of course. Very well. Okay. Next question. Do you think to have the best gear will improve your photography?
Yeah. So what I like to tell people is it's a 75-25% cut. Yeah. So I like to tell people that 25% of your quality of image comes down to your talent, your ability, your skill at the end of the day. But 25%, I like to tell people, comes down to your gear choice. Whether you like to talk about it or not, some people are totally gear averse. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of gear you have. Like, all that matters is the photographer. And that's not totally true. There is an element of gear will give me a better shot. I can personally attest to that over the years. I mean, literally just take out your iPhone, for example, and then take out, a Sony A1, and you're not gonna, get the same. Okay. You're not gonna get the same result, and so that's a very drastic example. But the same goes between beginner entry level cameras and advanced high end professional cameras. Like, there's going to be a difference. So some people are very averse in that way. But then some people are the opposite way, where it's like gear is all they believe matters, and they totally forget the part of self-improvement and growing as your skill and talent. And so yeah, that's a long answer to yes, I believe gear does matter, but maybe not as much as some people think, and maybe it does matter more than some people think. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Because having a 600 millimeters f4 lens or maybe a zoom lens, the difference is only in the quality of the image, the best background, more creamy, more sharpness. But if you are a bad photographer, even using the best lens or the best camera, you still remain a bad photographer. It's not the lens or the camera. Okay, if I'm improving myself as a photographer, maybe I can take advantage of a better camera like the Alpha 1 or the Nikon Z9. Okay, but as a beginner, it doesn't matter having a Alpha 1 or a Z9 instead of an entry-level camera. So I think
that's a good point.
You need to balance both aspects. So skill, gear, and the other aspect you was talking about. So I think the balance is the key in almost everything. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think what you were saying was really good too. Like you said, if you're a beginner, it doesn't matter if you have the A1, right, or the Z9 or an entry level camera. You're probably going to get relatively similar results, and I would agree with that. It so much depends more on your ability level than your gear level, but the gear will also be the frosting on top of the cake, right? And so I very much agree with that. And like the best example I could think of right now is I'm actually it's going to be a while till I put out these videos, but right now I'm working on using a lens that no one else is using, virtually hardly anyone else is using in the wildlife photography world at all, because most people would think it's impossible to get good shots with that type of lens. But I've been playing with it and experimenting with it. Eventually I will release a video series on it. But some of my favorite shots I've ever gotten already are with this new lens that no one else would be using, because normally they would label it as, not good enough for wildlife photography. But because it provides a unique angle, a creative angle, I'm getting stuff I really, really like. And so, so I think that...
I'm pretty curious to understand which lens it is.
I don't want to say it yet because I want it to... It's going to be a while. If I was releasing this stuff in 2-4 weeks from now, like I'd tell you right now, but because it's going to be a couple months, I don't want to say too early, but yeah, like it just goes to show that like if I gave that same lens to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, they would not get good shots at all. Like it would be very difficult to get good shots with that lens. But because I'm kind of creatively working with it, I have experience, I know how to work with unique types of angles, I'm able to get stuff that is pretty cool with this lens. So yeah.
Yes, I am going to wait really patiently.
Yeah, you might have to be waiting till like November or December, so sorry about that.
Okay, no problem, no problem. I'm going to wait. Very well.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is a little different. AI, the artificial intelligence, nowadays is present everywhere, even in cameras. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, there's a lot going on with AI. First of all, AI is a very big, how do I say it? It's what's the word? There's a better word than what I'm trying to say, but like a hype word. I know there's a better word than that. I can't think of the vocabulary right now, but it's like a hype word right now. So everyone's throwing AI on everything, when in reality, not a lot of things actually are AI. There are some things that are very much AI, but then there's a lot of things that are called AI when they're not actually AI. So it's kind of a weird situation because of that, to talk about everything specifically. But as a whole, I very much do like AI right now. I think it's very cool, like things that are truly AI. I think it's a very cool and exciting time. There's a lot of like ethical debates that we have to keep talking about. I think those are very important to keep talking about as a community, as a whole world right now, because there are things that we definitely can run into issues with. So I'm not trying to say that like AI without restraints maybe is the way to go, but I do think it's opening a lot of cool worlds for us to dive into. Now, when it comes into nature photography specifically, I do feel a lot more challenged in that way. So like, for example, I like AI a lot in my thumbnail designs on YouTube. All my YouTube thumbnails for the past like 6 months at least, I've had some sort of element of AI in manipulating the thumbnail to make it look, how I like it. So I use AI all the time and stuff like that. But when it comes to like my actual wildlife photo or my actual landscape photo I took out in nature, personally, I don't want to put any AI in there because it makes me feel like it doesn't feel honest to what I saw, and people are believing that these are things that I saw, right? So it's kind of a weird topic in wildlife photography specifically. So in wildlife photography, I'm not a big fan of it yet. Maybe that'll change someday, but at least that's at the moment. Like I want to show things as like kind of closer to how I captured them. But in other ways, I think it's an incredibly useful tool, and I use it all the time. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
okay, yes, more
Kinda.
or less. Yeah, because I was thinking about the new AI focusing system, like in the Nikon or Sony. The Sony was the first one, but it doesn't matter. So having a system that put the focus on the animal eyes, it's a really it's much more easier to get a good picture, at least a picture in focus of the animal using this system instead of using the manual focus or using your skill. Okay, so it's a great option for a beginner, but I think also for a skilled photographer. Even because I don't, for me, it's a great help because I don't have to always look for the eyes in focus, because there is an help from the camera. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that's kind of what I was, I guess, bringing up and mentioning at first is, so there's a lot of things that are maybe, and you could get into a whole debate about that. So, that we could go there if you wanted, or, we could just kind of leave it. But there are a lot of things that are called AI nowadays that are not technically AI. And so those are one of the things that, for example, like I'm familiar exactly with what you're talking about, but, artificial intelligence really is a program that's able to build and learn off of itself for basically bettering itself in the future, being able to take what it learned in the past, keep growing off of that knowledge. So at least in my opinion, when Sony says their autofocus AI, it's a term, but it's not actually AI in my opinion. It's the same, like it's more advanced, it's a step up, but it's still algorithmic. That system is not like taking what it's learned, backlogging it, and then improving every time you use your camera. Like the Sony autofocus AI, of what they call AI, is not like, it's not getting better at autofocusing every time you use it. So, therefore, I wouldn't view it as AI. And, there's a whole debate around that. So maybe I'm wrong. People could disagree with me.
No. That's right. But, that's right. Even because it should be impossible for a camera to store every data that learn over time. Okay. Yeah. It's impossible. The memory of a chip of a CPU is small. They can't contain everything. So you're right. Exactly. It's not a real AI, but a small portion. I think with restricted possibilities. So, we can't call it a real AI system. Maybe I don't know how to say in English.
It's a hard question.
Italian, I would say like a fake AI. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think it's a really interesting question, even though I'm a little worried for the future. You know, talking about AI in these terms can be dangerous for the photography in general, because
Yeah.
if you use a camera of a gear that take picture for you instead of being you that take pictures, it's a strange stuff. So it's not your photography; it's the photography of the camera.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, it's a hard question that we will like right now. AI is not at the level where it can do that, right? But someday I'm sure it will be there. Whether that takes a decade, whether that takes a century, I have no idea. But that is a question that we will have to tackle, and that's interesting. I think that at least for me in the foreseeable future, there's always going to be something that's very that people are going to crave authenticity. Even now, you already see that people crave authenticity, right? And so I think being able to provide authenticity in your wildlife photography is going to be something that hopefully will be valued even beyond when AI is good enough to do all of what you just said. Hopefully people still crave that enough. And I believe people will still crave that enough to be able to want that. Like people who watch, for example, my YouTube channel, they're watching me go out, take the picture. They're seeing the bird to levels that to that level of if AI could create that whole story and scene, that would be, I don't see that happening for a long time. So maybe someday again, but
I believe,
at least for
so.
At least for our lifetimes, I don't see it happening to that extent. And I believe that my story, for example, when I'm out doing wildlife photography, still matters. And I believe people still want that. I mean, that's why people watch it, right? So that's something I don't see AI being able to recreate, at least in my lifetime. So maybe that's a future generation, but who knows? I mean, people never thought we could fly, probably 100 years ago or so we'll see.
Very, very, very good point. Yes. And I totally agree with you. It's a controversial question. So maybe in future we'll be able to talk again of this topic, but maybe in different terms. So we will see what happens in future. Okay.
Yep.
Well, now there is a topic really important for me. I mean, wildlife approach. What's your favorite method to approach wildlife? Even though you have already told me something before.
Yeah. I think for me, I like to call it like a hybrid technique, where I'm trying to understand. So typically what I'll do, let's just take let's take like a song sparrow, for example. Like if there's a song sparrow that I'm noticing out in the field, what I'll try to do is maybe I'll try to approach it to a very safe distance where I know that I'm not really going to manipulate its behavior. So I'll approach it to that safe distance, and then I'll try to observe it as best as I can in its surroundings. And so I'll kind of observe maybe which branches it's going to sing, where it's going to feed, if it's going for a drink by a stream of water, whatever it may be, right? So I'll try to observe what it's doing, what its behaviors are. And then from there, I'll try to set myself into positions that I can capture nice aesthetic and scenic angles. So kind of a combination of what a lot of people call like blind photography, right? You have blind photography, which is staying in a blind, not moving for hours and waiting for them to come by one specific angle. And then on the other extreme, you have run and gun, which run and gun is like moving around, not really being very patient, just kind of moving around, taking shots wherever you're seeing them come along the way. So I like to combine the two because I don't like the lack of mobility in a blind. So very rarely do I do blind work unless it's absolutely necessary, because I honestly don't enjoy it as much, number one, but then also it just leaves me incapable to adjust to my setting and my surroundings. So because of that, I like to kind of merge that into being adaptable and being able to do run and gun if I need, and kind of finding a hybrid approach between the two. So yeah.
Okay, but a big fan of eyes using photo blinds in general, because as I say many times, in Italy it's quite difficult to look for or to find an animal in nature quite easily, like in other countries like UK or USA as well, where there are big parks like Yellowstones, but where it's easier to get an animal. But in Italy, for the majority, you need to stay or hide, or as I said, you have to study a lot your subject until you can get a little closer than before. So when I study a subject from far using the binoculars or a spotting scope, I can, as I said, understand their behaviors, where they go, where they hunt, and stuff like that. So only after that study I can go closer, but always staying at the right distance from the subject in order to not get them in trouble. I don't want to scare them. Okay, so this is my approach, the general approach. But I have to try even your approach because it's really interesting. So trying to balance the need to go really close to the subject and the balance to have more view around me.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's super important to note. What you said is like, you were saying in Italy, you feel like it's a different type of approach required, and so it's so important for people to understand like what kind of approach is required in what scenario, because what works for me in a lot of the places I frequent might not work for you. So I love that you shared that, and I think that that's very valuable.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Okay. Did you ever give up taking picture of an animal because you were annoying that animal with your presence there?
Oh, yeah. At first I thought that the question was going in one way and then it went down. I mean, I'm trying to think trying to think of a good example off the top of my head, but yes, I have before. I guess just as a general answer, if the animals, you're not gonna, I guess I view it this way. You're not gonna get really good shots anyways. If you're really bothering the animal and the animal's, keeps flying away from you, like you're not gonna get a good shot anyways. So there's no point in wasting your time. So I guess just in general, as soon as what I do is kind of I give myself a one bump rule. So what I mean by that is I always give myself one bump. Well, I shouldn't say always, but for most species, unless they're very, very what's the right word? Like rare species or endangered, or I don't really work with endangered species, but if they were to be that, then I want to be even more careful. Or at a nest, that's a better example. At a nest, otherwise, what I do is I give myself a one bump rule, which I will, work with a bird subjects. Like, let's say I'm working with a gray egret. I'll be working with that subject, and if I bump it once, now I know its limits. So now I have, as a photographer, know this is its boundaries. This is what I don't want to get closer than this. I don't want to approach it any more rapidly than this, so on and so forth. So once I know that, now I'll keep shooting the subject and attempt to not bump it again, obviously. But if I do bump it again, then that's kind of where I'm like, okay, like I'm going to leave the subject alone. So that's kind of my general rule of thumb ethically. Yeah.
Okay. So it's good. It's quite like me when I realized that a subject is annoyed by my presence. I prefer to make a step back in order to stay more far, and so the animal is much more calm, much more quiet, and they can to make their normal life. Even though I have to admit, at least in two situations, I have to give up because I was too closer. to the subject. Mostly for birds, when they are during the breeding season, staying too close to the nest can be pretty dangerous. So that time I realized that I was too close, so I prefer to give up, and I went away. So this is my general approach in situation like that, of course.
Yeah, so, I love it. Yeah.
Last question. How much important is for you planning photo shoots in nature? Do you plan photo shoots in nature?
Yeah. So by that question, do you mean like, are you asking like how important is it for me to like go out on a consistent basis, or are you meaning more like the planning in terms of the subject, or what are you kind of asking?
Planning in terms of a subject, study the place before, in order to understand, as I said before, their behaviors. So it's how much it's important for you planning all this stuff for making finally a good shot for you.
Cool. Yeah. Incredibly important. I probably go out and do wildlife photography a lot less than most people who are dedicated to wildlife photography. So if you a lot of people would be surprised to know, since wildlife photography is what I do, like I do it for work now mostly. It's most of my time spent working now, is doing wildlife photography. A lot of people would be surprised to know how little I actually do wildlife photography, because I'm very much also a business person. I'm an entrepreneur, so I love all of that side of things too, and I make content. And I spend a lot of time making the stories I do, doing things like running the competition that we're in the middle of right now. And so all that stuff takes up a lot of time. And in reality, I get out very little. I probably get out on average once a week or once every other week, like very low. And so it usually doesn't work out that way, in the sense of like, usually I won't do it for a whole month, and then I'll do it like 3 or 4 days back to back to back and just nail it out all in 1 week. Cause I like to function in that way. And the reason why I like to do that is because it's most effective for me in just exactly what you said. Because I'm not out as much, I need to be really researched and studied up on where certain birds are going to be, how they behave. That way I can know how to capture them well. I need to be studied up on the scenes that I'm going to, because, for example, if I go to, like, let's say there's one place to go to called Lost Lake quite a lot, and it's a river, and on the other side of the river is a hill. So depending on if it's sunset or sunrise, you're going to get totally different lighting scenarios, and you're going to get totally different backgrounds. So things like that, I need to be very in tune with where I'm going. That way I can make sure to have an effective use of my time. So I think to answer your question, it's incredibly important. And I spend a lot of time studying and researching and making sure that I know what I'm getting into before I do it. I
agree, because for me, planning a photo shoot is one of the most time-consuming activity, because before I have to scouting the area. I have to study the subject maybe on internet to understand the most thing of that subject, and finally only go outdoor looking for the bird or the animal in general, and try to take some picture, knowing that I can't maybe I can't take any picture, knowing that. So it's really hard to make the nature photographer. When really often you get back home without a picture. So it's a time-consuming activity, but it's really rewarding, because when you finally get the image of your dream, I know you are super happy of the result. Yes, and not only for that, but enjoy nature as a primarily activity is also a pleasure, For me,
Yeah.
staying even only in nature, maybe even don't not taking picture is fine. Usually, I be just walking in a woodland, watching what happens around me. It's always fine. So I think it's an important part for a nature photographer. Even to study yes, the surrounding where you live, to understand better the nature and the raptor. I don't know if I can say the raptor. Maybe not. I don't know. Sorry, one moment.
Gotta look up the translation.
Yeah. The relationship. Oh, sorry, Jeremy. The relationship between nature and humans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Most
So I think
definitely.
it's an important aspect to consider for nature photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's great. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Jeremy. For now is all. So thank you so much for your patience and for your answers. I really appreciate it, mostly because I have the chance to know you better and to share with everybody our knowledge about nature and photography as well. Of course, if you want to add something, please, Jeremy, you can.
Well, if this video has been uploaded before our competition deadline, I'd encourage you guys to check it out and submit if you're interested. We're giving away a $1,000 grand prize this year. We have almost $5,000 worth of prizes in our prize pool. We have a lot of awesome sponsors. What's kind of unique about the event is that it's judged live in real time. So it's the only event in the whole world in wildlife photography that's judged literally live, and it's judged by creators. So it's very cool event and opportunity for a lot of people. And even if the submission window has closed, you can still join us to watch the live event. I'm sure Giuseppe can throw a link below. And yeah, I'd love to see you guys on there. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Giuseppe. I love what you're doing in starting this podcast. I'm a huge fan of podcasts. Obviously, I mean, that's why I kind of do one as well. But yeah, I love what you're doing. And I hope you continue just growing with it and doing the good work you're doing.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you. Okay, as I said, I try to do my best to be online before the end of the competition. Okay. Okay, Jeremy, thank you. Really, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And well, guys, it's time to say goodbye. So thanks to Jeremy for his kindness, and please subscribe his 2 channels because there are a lot of wonderful and useful videos. Of course, you'll find the link in the description below, and hoping you are doing well. See you next time. Bye bye.